I caught my mother cheating with my husband while I was on my girls' trip. I came home a day early because my migraine had been building since Friday, and by Sunday morning I couldn't see properly out of my left eye, and I wanted my own bed and my own medicine cabinet, and I drove 3 hours with sunglasses on and one eye mostly closed, and I used my key, and I walked into my own house. I am going to skip the specific details of what I walked into because they belong to me and not to this story. What I will tell you is that I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom for long enough to understand completely what I was looking at, and then I walked back out to my car and sat in the driveway with my hands on the steering wheel and the migraine doing what migraines do, and I thought, I am going to need a minute before I know what to do next. I called Dara. She had been on the trip with me and she was still 3 hours away, and she picked up on the second ring and said, "Did you make it home okay?" And I said I made it home. I told her what I walked into. She was quiet for longer than silence usually lasts on a phone call. Then she said, "Oh God." She said, "Stay on the phone with me." Then she started talking in the careful way of someone who has decided to tell the truth. She said she had seen something 8 months ago at my daughter's birthday party. My mother, Brooklyn, and my husband, Ulysses, at the side of the house in a conversation that stopped when she walked around the corner. She said she had told herself it was nothing for 8 months because the alternative was telling me something she couldn't prove. I sat in the driveway and listened to my best friend carry something for 8 months because she loved me and didn't know how to hand it to me. I asked her one question. I asked who suggested the girls' trip. She was quiet again. She said my mother mentioned it to her in February. She said Brooklyn thought I needed a break and asked Dara to help organize it. I sat with that. My mother had called my best friend and suggested a trip to get me out of the house for a long weekend. I thought about the planning, the group chat, the hotel, the weekend I had been grateful for. I thought about who suggested it first. I said I need to go get Emma. My daughter was at my mother's neighbor's house for a play date because my mother had arranged a play date for the weekend. She had arranged to have my husband to herself. My mother had arranged childcare. She had thought of everything. She had been thoughtful and organized and thorough in the specific way of a person who had been planning something for long enough to anticipate every variable. I was a variable she had anticipated and managed. My own mother. I went back inside. They had heard the car. My husband was in the kitchen. My mother was not visible. I looked at my husband and said, "I'm getting Emma." He opened his mouth. I said, "I need you to not say anything right now." I drove to the neighbor's house and picked up my daughter, who was 7 years old and had no idea anything had happened, and told me about a game she'd invented involving their trampoline for the entire drive to Dara's apartment 3 hours away. Emma fell asleep an hour in. I drove in the quiet and thought about a February phone call and a group chat and a hotel and a play date and a girls' trip that was not a girls' trip. I got to Dara's after midnight. We got Emma onto the bed with pillows on both sides. We stood in the kitchen. The light above the stove was on and everything else was dark. I said, "Tell me everything you didn't tell me. All of it." Dara sat down at the table. She walked through it. At Emma's birthday party, she went around the side of the house looking for the cooler. She saw Brooklyn and Ulysses standing close, heads almost touching, talking low. When they heard her footsteps, they moved apart, fast, like a reflex. She said, it wasn't what they were doing, it was how fast they moved apart, like they already had a plan for getting caught. She said she watched them for the rest of the afternoon. They never spoke to each other again the entire party, not once. They were on opposite sides of the yard for 4 straight hours. She said that was stranger than if they had been talking. People who have nothing to hide don't avoid each other that carefully. After the party, Dara started paying attention. She noticed Brooklyn texting during family dinners and putting her phone face down. She noticed Ulysses offering to drive Brooklyn home after gatherings. Then she said, "The February phone call." She called me from a number I didn't have saved. She said it was her new phone. I looked it up later. It was a prepaid number. Your mom used a burner phone to call me about a girls' trip. A burner phone. My mother went to a store and bought a prepaid phone to call my best friend to plan a trip that would get me out of my own house. I said, "She planned this the way you plan a project, with steps, with backup plans." Dara nodded. We were past the part where other explanations lived. My phone buzzed. "Ulysses, where are you? Where's Emma? We need to talk." I put the phone face down. Then Dara's phone rang. She turned the screen toward me. Brooklyn. My mother was calling Dara, not me. She was calling Dara because Dara was most likely to know where I was and what I knew. She was gathering information. She was still managing. Dara answered on speaker. Brooklyn's voice was calm, measured. She said, "Dara, honey, is she with you? She took Emma and I just want to make sure they're safe. I think there's been a misunderstanding and I really need to talk to her before she does something she'll regret." Misunderstanding. I put my hand on the counter and breathed. Dara said, "She's safe. Emma's safe. She needs some time." Brooklyn said, "Time is fine, but she has my granddaughter and she left without saying anything and I'm worried about her state of mind." Her state of mind. My mother was not worried about what she had done. She was worried about what I was going to do about it. She was building something, not an apology, a case. The version where she was the concerned grandmother and I was the daughter who grabbed her child and drove away like someone who wasn't thinking clearly. I ended the call. I put my phone in the drawer next to Dara's silverware and closed it. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I pulled my phone out and opened my texts with Brooklyn and scrolled back months. I started to see something I had not seen before. Every 2 or 3 weeks, a suggestion. Something she had done for me. In October, a spa appointment she said she won in a raffle. In November, a dinner she arranged with women from my school. In December, a yoga class she signed us both up for then canceled on 20 minutes before. In January, a brunch with my aunt. In February, a spa gift card with a note saying, "Use this Saturday." And then the big one, the girls' trip. 7 times in 4 months, my mother had created a reason for me to leave my own house. 7 windows she had opened so she could climb through them, and I had thanked her for every single one. I had texted heart emojis and said, "You're the best mom," and she had responded with smiley faces and said, "Anything for my girl." I screenshotted every text. I saved them to a folder and named it February. The next morning, Emma came out rubbing her eyes and said, "Mommy, why are we at Dara's?" I said, "Mommy and Daddy need to figure some things out. Is that okay?" She thought for 2 seconds. "Can we have pancakes?" Dara was already cracking eggs. Ulysses called 3 times before 9. I answered the third one from the bathroom. He said, "You can't just take Emma." I said, "I can take my daughter anywhere I want." He said, "Can we please just talk about this?" I said, "Talk about what, Ulysses? Be specific." Silence. I said, "That's what I thought. Do not call me again today." My voice had not shaken, not once. I counted that as a win. I called my cousin Connell. He'd been through his own divorce 2 years ago. I told him everything. He said, "Do you have somewhere to stay that isn't your house?" Yes. Good. Don't go back without a plan. Don't let either of them talk to you until you've talked to a lawyer. He gave me a name. That was the first conversation in 24 hours that felt like solid ground. Around noon, Brooklyn texted. Long, carefully worded. She said she was heartbroken I left without letting her explain. She said the situation was more complicated than what it looked like. She said she loved her daughter more than anything and would never intentionally hurt me. Intentionally. I thought about the burner phone she bought on purpose. The February call she made on purpose. The play date she arranged on purpose. The 7 windows she opened on purpose. My mother told me she would never intentionally hurt me in a message she spent 30 minutes composing on the same phone she used to coordinate the most intentional thing anyone had ever done to me. I did not respond. Monday, I needed to go get things from the house. Connell met me there. Brooklyn's car was in my driveway at 10 a.m. My mother's car parked in front of my house while I was supposed to be somewhere else figuring out how to survive what she had done. I said, I want her to see me walk through my own front door. Brooklyn was at my kitchen table with coffee like she lived there. Ulysses was by the sink. She said, "Thank God. Can we please just sit down and talk about this like a family?" I said, "You need to leave." She said, "Sweetheart, running away isn't going to fix anything." I said, "I didn't run away. I left. I need you to not be here while I get my things." Brooklyn looked past me at Connell. She said, "I don't understand why you brought him into a family matter." Connell said, "I'm family, Brooklyn." I went to Emma's room and packed the big suitcase. Her shirts, her jeans, her favorite hoodie with the cat, her sneakers, the stuffed rabbit with one ear longer than the other because she had pulled on it for years. I went to the office and took the folders from the filing cabinet. Mortgage, insurance, birth certificate, everything. Ulysses followed me room to room saying we could work through this. I did not respond to any of it. I was closing the suitcase when Brooklyn appeared in Emma's doorway. She said, "You're going to confuse her. You're going to drag that little girl through your anger." I said, "You arranged a play date so she would be next door while you were in my bedroom with my husband. You do not get to talk to me about protecting my daughter." Her composure cracked. Then she said, "That is not what happened." I said, "Dara told me about the phone call in February, the one from the prepaid number, the one where you asked her to help plan a trip to get me out of the house." Her mouth opened. She did not know Dara knew about the phone. For the first time, I had a piece of information she didn't know I had. She said, "Dara is confused. I used a different phone because mine was broken." I said, "Your phone wasn't broken, Mom. You posted on social media from it the same week." For the first time in my life, I watched my mother run out of moves. I picked up the suitcase. I said, "I'll be in touch through a lawyer." She called after me. "You're making a mistake." I put the suitcase in the trunk. I drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. On Thursday, Ulysses came to see Emma at a park near Dara's apartment. Emma ran to him yelling, "Daddy!" and he picked her up, and I stood there watching my daughter wrap her arms around her father's neck, and I felt grief, not for him, for the version of him I thought I married. After Dara took Emma to the far swings, Ulysses sat on the bench beside me. He said, "Your mom told me you weren't happy. She told me you had been talking about leaving for months. She told me you said you didn't love me anymore." I stared at him. I said, "And you believed her?" He said, "She's your mother. Why would she lie about that?" I said, "When did she start telling you this?" He said, "Last fall, around September. 5 months before the February phone call. 5 months of my mother feeding my husband a story about a wife who didn't love him. 5 months of softening him, making him feel alone in his own marriage, creating a hole and then stepping into it." I said, "I never said any of those things. Not one." She made it up. He said, "I know that now." I said, "When did you know?" He said, "When you walked into the bedroom. The look on your face. That wasn't the face of someone who had stopped caring. He knew the truth the second he was caught, and he still didn't come to me. He chose silence the same way he chose everything else." I said, "That's not enough." He said, "I know." I went back to Dara's and told her everything. September. The lies Brooklyn fed him. Dara said, "She spent 5 months setting him up." I said, "She spent 5 months setting both of us up. She was telling him I didn't love him, and telling me he was pulling away. She was narrating a story to both of us at the same time, and neither of us could see it because we were living inside it." I said the thing I hadn't said out loud yet. She didn't just have an affair with my husband. She built the affair. She constructed it from nothing. There was no affair to have until she convinced him his wife had already left. I called Brooklyn. She answered on the 3rd ring. I said, "I talked to Ulysses. He told me what you said about me, that I wanted to leave, that I didn't love him." She said, "I was trying to help. I could see your marriage was struggling." I said, "You told him I didn't love him so he would turn to you." Her voice changed, lower, harder. She said, "You want to know the truth? Fine. You had everything I never had. A husband who came home, a daughter who adored you, a house that was yours, and you walked around like none of it mattered, like it was all just something that happened to you. I watched you waste it." I listened to my mother say the quiet thing, the real thing underneath the burner phone and the 7 windows and all of it. Jealousy, not of Ulysses, of the life, of the daughter who had what the mother never got and didn't seem grateful enough. I said, "So you took it." She said, "You weren't using it." I felt that sentence land like a nail driven into wood. My mother stole my husband because I wasn't thankful enough, because I walked around my own life like it was ordinary, because I had what she wanted and I committed the sin of not performing enough gratitude for it. I said, "I'm going to hang up now. I won't be calling again. If you want to see Emma, it will be through a lawyer and you will never be alone with her." I hung up. That night, Dara sat next to me on the couch. I said, "I keep thinking about February, her calling you, planning the trip. She was so excited about it. She kept texting the group chat with restaurant suggestions." Dara said, "I know." I said, "She was excited because she was building the weekend she wanted. We were just the cover." I was quiet for a while. Then I said, "I'm going to be okay. Not right now, but I'm going to be." Dara said, "I know that too." Emma's backpack was by the door. The stuffed rabbit was on the pillow. I thought about what I had. My daughter, my best friend, my cousin who answers the phone, a lawyer who returns emails, a couch that is not mine but is safe. I thought about what I lost, and I decided that what I lost was something that was never real, and you can't actually lose something that was never real. You can only stop believing in it. I stopped believing in it in a doorway with a migraine and one working eye, and I am going to build everything that comes next with both eyes open.